the reset switch and the hard drive lights. So find out where they are on the motherboard. Okay, you can also check for the SATA connector. So we got the SATAs here. This is A1, A2, SATA 0, SATA 1, SATA 2, SATA 3, SATA 4, SATA 5. So usually you'll plug it into SATA 0 first. I'm not sure if the A1 or A2 is something special, but I'll check that later. If it is, I'll switch it. So those kinds of things, if there's anything kind of strange, you can look it up in the little booklet, and then depending on what it says, some of them will be like faster ports and things like that. Usually with SATA, it'll decide on its own which one is the main boot device, but even though I still like to plug the first drive into SATA 0, but yeah, if you're kind of lazy or whatever, you don't have to. So there you go, SATA 0, put the excess out of the way, there we go. And then again with the audio and everything, so we got here, front panel 1, let's see what else is here. So normally on this it'll show you what each one is, but I'm going to need a flashlight, so can I use a flashlight? So let's see here, so we got this, there's the front panel, so it shows here, speaker. Oh, this is actually very tough to read on this board. Might have to get out the booklet for it. Power LEDs on the bottom. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna need the. This is tough to read. Actually, if I can take a picture of it. Let's see here. Turn on the flash. Get a picture with all the writing and everything on it. Okay, so there's power LED, there's, oh, that's kind of too dim to read, so since that's hard to read, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to actually get the motherboard book, and then hopefully I don't have to too far for it. So here's the speaker, power LED, USB, no. Go through all that. So if it's tough to read on the board, you're probably gonna have to go through this booklet. It sucks, but yeah. Okay, hard drive LED, ground, power LED, power button. So here you can see they'll have the little hole on this one. Power LED positive, power LED minus. Usually I find it doesn't even have a positive or minus, so it doesn't matter. You just plug it whichever way. But if the lights don't come on, you could always switch them around. Then you got the hard drive LEDs and the ground. And then you got the power button at the top and the ground. So that's usually the negative. So we'll just grab the connectors now. So if you look on here, got the hole on this one, so that means the power button will go on the top right, and then here will be the power LEDs, which this case doesn't have, and then the hard drive LED will be on the bottom of that, and then to the right will be the reset switch, and then this button, this little one won't be used actually. Let's see, okay, yep. Alright, let's grab those cables and then we'll slot them through. Go here. Actually, where's this one should be the audio. Yeah. So the bottom right, we'll do the audio first. Grab that. Get it through the bottom. So since this one has the hole there, line it up that way. Have the hole going that direction. And then flip it over. Alright, there you go. Pull the excess out. And then get the two buttons. Oops. goes through there. Okay. I'll check this again just to make sure. Power button is on the top, and then hard drive, and then reset. Okay. So we got the power button. Power switch will go to the far side. And then we got the hard drive into this side here. So there, power button here. And then we got the reset switch here. Some motherboards will come with a little adapter that you can put all these pins into first, and then you can just plug the whole thing in. Makes it a lot easier. But this one, they did it like that, so that's how we did it. Okay, make sure I did that. This is the reset, right? Yep, okay. Alright. Now we got all the motherboard connections. Oops. Make sure it goes into the right ones. There we go. And then pull all the excess cable out. Now, this case is looking pretty good. When this is done, you won't even see this cable, so this is basically what you'll see when you look at the motherboard. Let's see, okay, so we got that. Then this came with an RGB connector, and it came with an RGB light. So if you want, you can connect this. This RGB light actually has magnets that will hold it in place, so depending where you want to stick it. So since the connector's there, connect that in there. Just make sure always that you get the latch lined up with the thing here. Same as everything else. And then depending where you want this, usually I like to put it towards the top just to hide the cables and everything so you don't have to look at the actual LEDs. And then you can actually pull this excess through as well. So that, where does that go? Here. Go. Pull the excess. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, the other end is connected to the top panel, so this might be a little tricky. There we go. So pull the excess through. Make sure this thing stays in place. Up here, if you want, you can hide it further back here. But I feel that up here is probably the best place, so we'll put it up here. Okay, then you'll have this connector. Just have it hiding as much as possible. There we go. So you got all of that connected. Then the only thing left is the RAM and then the CPU cooler and the CPU. So the RAM, very simple. Usually put the RAM first because sometimes the CPU cooler will get in the way. So open it up. Here's one of the other mistakes that I've seen a lot of people run into. On these newer motherboards, this piece doesn't move, but these do. So depending on your motherboard, sometimes the RAM layout might want you to do it differently. You can peel off this clear stuff on the RAM. But what I've seen on most is usually you'll want to skip the first one that's closest to the CPU and then do the next one over, and then skip another one and do the other one over. Some of the new motherboards I've seen, they're pretty nice, and they'll actually tell you if you put the RAM in the wrong slots that it doesn't like. It'll tell you to do the other ones first. So one of the big issues I've seen is people fail to push this side in hard enough. So when you push it, you should hear it click. There you go. It's kind of quiet, but you'll hear that click. And then the other side you can push in, you'll see that thing physically move and clip into place. So just to make sure, you can push it again. Make sure everything's tight in place. It did move a little bit more, so it's always good to check. Keep pressing both of them, and then that's good. And then for the CPU fan, of course, you also want it to face so that all the air is going in the same direction. You don't want it to fight with other fans. So in this case, since these fans are all blowing that way, you want this also to blow that way. So with this one, it kind of annoys me that the logo is going to be sideways, but that's how it's going to have to be. So decide which way you want it. You can have this logo however you want. It shouldn't matter. Just make sure that once you got that the fan is going to fit on there okay. So the fan is going to be going this way. Just make sure that it's going to go on like that. If it's on that side, make sure it's going to fit on this side. Okay, so it looks like it'll go this way. Okay. So for this specific one, you'll take this little cover off. Save this, because if your motherboard has any issues and you need to warranty it, they're going to want you to put this back just to keep it safe, because if these pins get damaged, they're not going to cover the warranty. I had one person that didn't have it, and to get around that, I just put something solid on top to cover this so it wouldn't touch the pins, and I just wrapped some bubble wrap around it to keep it safe. So depending what you want to do, it's best to keep this safe. Alright, so once you do that, get your CPU out, grab it. Usually the CPU, you don't want to touch the pins, and usually they'll have like an arrow here, a little dot here, something like that, and then you can also see there's like notches on both sides. So for this one, to get this latch out, it looks like I actually have to move this first. So this one uses a special screwdriver, so loosen this. With this, okay, good. Alright. Get those out of the way. So there's the latch here. You got to pull it to the side, and it lifts up like this, and you can lift the whole thing out. Push this out of the way. Make sure not to touch the pins in here. I had someone, they somehow bent the pins on there, and once you bend it, it's pretty much the motherboard's gone. So again, this has the notches here. This also has notches here, and then also usually there'll be like an arrow or something on this board, but it looks like they didn't really put one. At least it's not very visible. So the easiest thing to do is just check these notches and make sure those line up. And for this, you want to drop it straight in. So kind of make sure the notches line up, and then just drop it down. And then you can check, make sure it moves around. Usually you don't want to touch this because you're going to be putting the thermal paste there. And if you get some of your grease on there from your hands, it's not going to make as good of a thermal connection. And then it will get a little bit hotter. Usually a little grease isn't too bad, but better to have like the best temperatures. Alright, got that. Then what you want to do, since I took this out, I should put this back. Alright, put these back in place. There's all different kinds of thermal paste. Usually what I find is they're pretty similar in temperature, so it's really up to you what you want to use. I like to use Icy Diamond. A lot of people complain because it scratches the die, but you don't really look at it, so it doesn't really matter. And that's just a little plate anyways, so it's not actually the part of the CPU that's getting damaged. It's just a piece of metal that's transferring the heat over. So not really that important that if it's getting scratched, but some people like to keep it looking nice and new. In this case, since this this CPU cooler came with this stuff, I'm just going to use it. So basically just put a blob in the center, usually put like the size of a pea. This stuff's pretty liquidy, so I'll get it in the center. Okay, that's pretty much plenty. You don't want to overdo the thermal paste, because if you do, it's going to like spread over and then start falling into the chip. So usually piece size is already plenty. And then just make sure it goes and stays in the center. A lot of people like to do different methods. I found that this spreads it out the best, but you can do whatever you want. I found like some people use pre-spread it or make an X or whatever. If you want to make sure it has good coverage, I found if you already like have it all messy all over, what you could do is spread it flat. Once you have like a nice flat spread, you can put a tiny dot in the center, so that way when you push it down, that dot will push all the air bubbles out from the messed up stuff. So there you go. Once you got that, again, make sure the fan will connect the right way so that you don't have to take it out and put it back on. Looks good. This side won't fit, so it definitely goes that way. Alright, make sure these screws are in tight. Use the screwdriver. Alright, there we go. Make sure to take the plastic cover off. If it has tape, take the tape off, whatever you're using on your CPU cooler. Because if you don't, then you're not going to get good thermal contact and your CPU is going to overheat. You'll know your CPU is overheating because when you're using your computer, it's going to all of a sudden shut itself off. If you turn it back on, it's going to shut off a lot sooner, but don't keep doing that or you'll fry your CPU and possibly damage your motherboard. So with this one, make sure these screws line up. Looks like they made it pretty simple and straightforward. And you just want to tighten it up. So usually I'll tighten one side a little bit first. Once you make sure it's attached, then go to the other side. Make sure it's lined up. And make sure tighten this one. It's going to be a little tough because it's spring loaded. But yeah, there you go. Alright, and then just tighten it a little bit on each side at a time, so that way even pressure is applied to it. Usually I like to count like how many times I twist it. This screwdriver is a little bit weird, so it's kind of tougher to do that. So that one's already tightened. Then tighten this one all the way. Alright, there you go. Alright, there we go. Tight in place, not moving it even a little bit. And once you do that, you can let it sit a little bit. That way the thermal paste can spread. And then you can try tightening it again one more time. It looks like this one is good to go. Alright, and then the springs will kind of keep the pressure on it. So then the other one, make sure you find out where the CPU fan connector is. This one is on the other side over here, and I don't like how this cable's going this way, so I'm actually going to move these metal things over if I can. Take this one out. Take this one out. And place them this way. Alright. Simple enough. Got that. This one actually comes with an extender. I might actually use that. So let's see here. So you don't really need the extender, but I feel like actually this one's not a extender, it's a low noise adapter. So this one will actually lower the voltage a little bit just so the fan doesn't spin up as much. So if you want, you can use this. Usually Noctua fans are already super quiet, so I'm probably actually not going to use that. Just so it keeps the CPU cooler. Alright, so let's see if this cable's long enough to keep it out of the way, as well as, let me plug it in here. Okay, not much room here, so I'm going to try this in. Alright, there we go. Alright, and then we can snap this in place. I'll get that fan cable out of the way. Line this all up. And then that in place and snap this in place. There we go. The fan cable's a little bit there, a little bit visible, but not too bad, so I guess it's okay. We'll just leave it there. Alright, if you want, you can try and pull that through a little bit. Okay. Let's see, actually with this one I'll actually hide it underneath the fan itself, if I can. So let's see here. So turn the fan connector that way, and then you can tuck the connector underneath there. There we go. Since it's gonna have the wire anyways, now instead of 2 wires going to the back, we just got this one. Alright. And for this build, I think that's pretty much it. We have the Velcros, so I'm gonna clean up the wiring, and then we just need to wait for the video card. So I'll show you clean up the wiring. So I got the CPU connector here. This might actually be nicer if I hide it on the back like the other one. So let's see if I can fit that in there. Hide that like that. These ones are overlapping, so I'm gonna have to take this one out actually and get it so it's not. There we go. So we got that. Make sure these connectors are all tight. Alright, hide the CPU wire through here. We got this is the audio cable. This one, okay. This one for now. I'm probably going to want to move some stuff around. Move this. Plug these. Just so we can hide this connector underneath. There we go. Back in. I have to keep unplugging and plugging stuff back in until I get it all clean. Yep. So we can hide this one here. They like to have it going along this, so maybe I'll use that since they put that in place already. Got this. Oh, I probably pulled the light down. Light in place up there. Don't want to pull on this one. Alright, so we've got the light connector here. This one I guess we can hide down the side here. And we got the USB 3 cable. Then we got all these other cables, so I'll pull the extra slack over. Like this. These. Make sure they're not covering them. Extra slack. That one. Put this back here. Have it hold that in place so it's hidden and out of the way. Like this. Usually when I got a bunch of cables like this, I like to use one of the ties to hold it in place. So take one of these. Put it through here. Put that through there. There, like that. That way it keeps it all together. Wrap it all up. There we go. Keep it in a corner like this. Follow the lines. Okay, so we got that. Got all of these connectors. So since we got all of that, I'll probably put another one there. This bundle of wires. Throw it through. Let's go in here. Go. Pull the slack through. This wire's a little loose. Okay. Get it all bundled together. Tighten it up. Wrap this around. Okay, there we go. Tight all the excess cables into this little hole down here. That. And grab all these wires. All going this way. This. All going this. Thread it through here. Pull it tight so they don't move around. Attach that. Same thing with this one. Put it underneath all the wires. Get this as close as possible so it's not all everywhere. This one has a little excess. What you can do is you can either pull it all and then hide it down there, or you can pull it up the other way and then fold it up a little bit. I think in this case I'm going to pull them all down towards the bottom here. Like that. Wrap them all up. USB 3.1 there is kind of, you can't really do much about it, so just fold it that way. Slide that through. Put it tight. Make sure everything's good. Depending how much clearance you have, you might have to spread these out so it's flat. These cables are smaller, so it's okay, but this one with the CPU, or not the CPU, the motherboard connector is kind of big, so these cables you'll want to spread them out. Do that way. There you go. There's one more here. I feel this is kind of messy, so I'm going to probably use one of those extra Velcros and use that to tighten up the bundle. So again, you can make sure these are tight just to clean it up. Pull those through. Get that one in there. Okay, try to spread out the cables. It's kind of thick. Push these cables down there. Spread them out a bit, and then tighten that. And I feel this one's a little bit bunched up, kind of weird, so I'm gonna use one of these. Let's see if I can get it through. Actually, let this one up. Get the wire through here. Oh, this rubber piece is falling in. There we go. Get that under there. Through here. This. Just to keep them all more nicely bundled. Put this one again to keep it flat. There we go. Make sure spread them out so they stay relatively flat. Yeah. Same thing with these. Make sure they're relatively flat. Don't want to make it sticking up too much and then the cover won't fit. Got that, and then get that up. Same thing. These ones look kind of messy too. Not too bad. But I'll probably clean it up as well. Got that. Can't really do much with the SATA one since it's tied together. So here, since we got two more of these, might as well use them. This one, hide it in here. Slide it underneath. Put it through. All the connectors. Great. Go. Put this through. Up, wrap it around. Yep. what's left is just this little bunch here. This one, if you want to make it nice, since you got one left, also wrap that as well. I like to make the fuzzy side sticking up, so that way if you work on it or open it, it's not as scratchy. So thread this one through. This wire here. Yep. Through here. Go. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Now you just gotta put the cases and things on. If you got some loose wires that are being kind of ugly, just move them around. There you go. Not too bad. Most of the stuff is hidden pretty well. Okay. Most people think, oh, this is just for looks, there's no point, why waste time? But actually, if you keep these wires out of the way, it'll help with the airflow. See, now the CPU fan isn't being blocked much. Get better airflow. Also, as dust and stuff gets pulled in, there'll be less stuff for it to stick to, so it'll actually stay cleaner in the case. And it'll be a lot easier to clean because all the dust will just fall here, and then it'll stick to this. So you'll end up only needing to clean this and this. Using usually to clean it up, what I do is I'll take the vacuum hose and I'll just stick it on this fan. The fan will spin really fast. Just make sure you don't touch the fan with the vacuum, and then that reverse suction will make the fan actually pull a suction, and it'll pull all the dust back off of the grate. Another way, if you have pressurized air or something, you can just blow it back the opposite way, but then all the dust will fly around in your house. So if you do that, make sure to do that outside. Okay, so that's good. That's good. You can test it actually with the motherboard video card. So if my brother has his if he has his monitor and everything hooked up, we can do that. So yep, we'll just put the case and everything back on. So we got the test it out here. Make sure everything's connected. Sometimes when you do this wiring, you might accidentally pull something, so just make sure everything's good. That looks good. That's okay. That's okay. Everything looks good. Make sure that's good. Alright. Got that. So this specific case, it goes in somewhat like this and it slides over. Other cases, it'll have like little latches here that you just pull up one corner and it'll latch like this. So depending which case you have, if for some reason you can't pull it out this way, try pulling it up this way. And then other cases, they'll actually have little buttons if it doesn't have screws like these. So just check your manual if you're not sure what to do, and you'll be able to find out how to open your case. There's that side. Looks perfect. Didn't have to worry about anything sticking out. This one we'll have to wait for the video card, so I'll just leave this here. But eventually I might have to open it up. That's another reason why I like Velcro and things like that. If I need to redo stuff like this, I don't have to worry about cutting a bunch of zip ties and then doing it again. So there's that. Everything looks good. Fan's all connected. That's another thing. If you want to be safe, if you haven't really built many computers, what you can do after you finish, don't put on this side panel, and then when you plug it in and turn it on, just make sure all the fans are spinning. If you have liquid cooling, make sure you hear the liquid moving around, because if you start it up and the liquid's not moving, your computer is going to be fried pretty quickly. The liquid from the liquid coolers don't really have much thermal capacity compared to one of these heat sinks. So if the liquid's just sitting there, it's not going to flow around, and it's gonna fry your computer real quick. So make sure if you're using liquid cooling, that you hear that liquid moving around the first time you turn it on. All right. Get these in. And with liquid cooling, I've seen them fail a lot in the past, so I kind of like to avoid that. But if you like overclocking and things like that, or keeping less dust in your computer, thermal cooling works pretty well. The only thing is you might want to monitor your cooling every so often, because if the pump fails or if the fan fails, especially if your liquid cooling system only has like 1 or 2 fans, it can cause a CPU to overheat and burn up pretty quickly. So make sure to look out for that if you're using liquid cooling. Alright, so now we're going to connect it.
Let's test it out.
All this. You might want to clear off that bottom part of your table.
Okay.
Again, for the power supply, make sure you flip the switch up to the 1. Alright, might want to move your chair out of the way. This one, since there's no buttons or anything on the front, actually your desk will work perfectly. You can keep it sideways, and the button's all on top, the USB, everything's on top, so this will work perfectly for this short lower part of the desk. And you can see your whole side of your computer, so that's nice. Oh, okay, like that. To be safe, if you're plugging it in, try and get one of these surge protector power strips. It'll be better than just plugging it directly into the wall. Alright, so we can see the motherboard's lighting up. We've got everything except for the GPU.